We're now going to go through and start looking at how we manage financial risk within our business. It's a very important part of the syllabus. It gets regularly examined. It's highly numerical, but don't let that put you off. There are plenty of marks available within the financial risk questions that are purely written as well. But the weightings, if you're looking on past history, it's weighted more towards the numbers than what you have in terms of the written aspects. And the way in which we're going to go through and approach it is we're not going to just dive in and start looking at the numbers. We're just going to go through and get ourselves into a brief introduction about what financial risk is and what the basic techniques are that we have in terms of managing financial risk without looking at the detail of foreign exchange risk or interest rate risk. Now, if we go through and start off by looking at what financial risk is, we can split it out into three separate categories. First type of financial risk that we are going to be faced with is what is referred to as currency risk. Now, this is something that you've gone through before and seen in your studies at F9. We went through there when we looked at foreign currency risk. We went through there and focused predominantly on your transaction risk. So if you're there buying or selling goods in a foreign currency on credit, what may happen is you sell your goods to a customer and you're going to expect a receipt of an overseas currency in, say, 3 months' time. However, the risk that we are exposed to is that the date from today up until when we receive the cash in 3 months' time, there may be a change within the foreign exchange rate that ultimately may mean that we receive more or less cash in our home or domestic currency. You should be familiar with the majority of the techniques from F9, so things that we'll go through and see are forward exchange contracts, money market hedges, but then we'll look at some more complex derivative products. What we also have in terms of financial risk is looking at your market risk, or sometimes referred to as price risk, because what we're looking at there is your commodity prices that may change. So if you're there, a jewellery manufacturer, and you're there producing gold jewellery, you'll need to go through and buy some gold in the future. Again, you're worried that the price of your gold will rise in the future and you'll pay more in the future than what you could have paid if you were to buy it today. The other market risk that you can commonly see is also referring there to your share price risk. If you're looking to buy a share in the future, there's a risk there that the price of the share will increase and you'll pay more for that share in the future than what you will today. The final risk in terms of financial risk is going through there and looking at interest rate risk. We'll see this in much detail later on in one of the sessions, but all we're looking at there is that you have identified that you need to borrow some cash in the future. The risk that you're subjected to there is the fact that the interest rates may rise between today and when we take out the loan, which will ultimately mean that you pay more interest on the loan. The two techniques that we're going to go through and look at predominantly within P4 are looking at your currency risk and looking at your interest rate risk. And the way in which we're going to go through and look at them is by a technique of what is known as hedging. Now, hedging is quite simply going through there and fixing a price of something in the future. So when we're looking at our different risks, we're looking at our foreign currency risk, our interest rate risk, and our commodity price risk. We're looking to go through there and fix a foreign exchange rate in the future by doing something today. Similarly, with our interest rates, we want to fix an interest rate in the future by doing something today. With our commodity prices, we want to fix a price in the future by doing something today. We are going through, and the key thing about hedging is that you're looking to fix a price. We are not speculating. We can leave speculating to all those people within the city. We're just hedging, fixing a price. Now, we've gone through and said within P4 that a lot of it is about offering advice as well as just going through and computing the figures. So what you need to think about first before you go in and start looking at your hedging techniques is to start thinking about, do we actually need to go through and hedge in the first place? Is it actually worth doing something today to try and fix that price in the future? Well, the need for hedging will go through and increase within a business based upon three separate things to consider. First one that we're going to go through and consider is looking there at the size of the transaction. So if I'm looking to go through, say, and buy some oranges in the future because I'm an orange juice manufacturer, if I'm only going to go through and buy one orange in the future, that orange is only going to go through and cost me 10 or 15 pence. Doesn't really go through and matter there because that price is not going to go through and increase dramatically in the future as the size of the transaction is fairly small. But if I was all of a sudden buying millions and millions of pounds worth of oranges, the bigger the transaction, the more risk that we are then subjected to, and therefore the more the need for hedging increases. Other thing that we need to go through and consider before we hedge is the length of time before settlement. If I'm looking to buy my oranges in the future and I'm looking to buy them tomorrow, then there's much less risk that the price will change than if I'm going to go through and buy those oranges in, say, 3 months' time. The third and final thing that we need to consider is the volatility. If the price of orange juice fluctuates quite dramatically, maybe due to there being bad weather at the orange plantation, then the price will go through and change, and we are therefore subject to higher levels of risk. So what we're going to go through and do is we're going to stick with the oranges theme for the time being, and we're going to go through and look at the different methods that we have in terms of hedging and work a very simple example to ensure that we are happy with how it all fits together. So what we're going to go through and do when we look at our hedging, we're going to look at 4 derivative methods of hedging. We're going to go through there. First of all, we're going to look at the definition of a forward and then work some numbers. We're then going to go through and look at the definition of a future and work some numbers. We will then go through and look at options, look at the definition and then work some numbers. And then finally we'll go through there and start looking at our swaps, look at the definition and then again work some numbers. So let's go.